I'm just gonna hold the camera on this bearing. I'm trying to get that shaft through that bearing, and it's kind of a little pain in the it's a pain in the ass to get it through. What I'm doing is on the other end, it's a hollow shaft, or it's a tube shaft. Holds the gears in there. It holds those gears and those spacers in there, but you got to get get the shaft through that bearing. It comes in from the other side. Otherwise, I would have kind of pressed that bearing onto the shaft. But it comes in from the other side. So what I'm doing is I've just got a piece of wood and dead blow hammer and hammering on the other end of it. So I'll let you just watch the progress. It's very slow. Did it come out at all? Yeah. Not much though. I can't even get that nut started on it yet. Or maybe I can. Yeah, I can. It's really slow. I'll bring it back. So as you can see, I got it through most of the way. I'll put the rest of the gears in and then get that nut on there. Once the rest of the gears are in, you can kind of lock that thing up. I've got to come around and before I put the rest of those gears in, I want to get the tubes back in there to go into the TA. So I'll bring you back for that. I'm just going to give you a shot of this. This is the lower half of the TA, or I call it the lower half because when I put it in, I had it standing upright. So this was the part that went in first, or it's the back half towards the rear end of the tractor. I've got the bolts in here, but what I have to do is actually take them back out and there's a retaining plate that goes around them. And I've got to put it back on. Apparently that's not that one. Let me grab the other one. Anyways, the retaining plate goes around it, and I've got to put it back on and pin it over onto the bolts. Okay, so they don't go like that. How about this? Yeah. So I've just got to put these retaining plates back on, and then I'm going to start putting that upper gear cluster back in. I'll probably pin these things over before I start putting that upper gear cluster back in. Be a lot easier to get to it. I'm going to have to go to the manual, find the torque value for this too. Because I need to torque these in before I can before I put the other gears in, or I would never be able to get to them. I have to go get a box end wrench for that other one. I was, I'm actually shooting this part of the video. It's a Sunday. And it's very unusual for me to be in the shop on a Sunday, but because I usually go climbing on Sundays. But I was, we were in the shop yesterday, my grandson and I, and his, oh, bitch, that's got a sharp edge on there. His wife has got this Buick Rendezvous, and she's been having problems with the door. The door keeps coming loose and it drops down. When you unlatch it, it drops down, or drops down when you try and shut it. You have to actually pick up on the door to get it to latch. And she loves this car. And I got to tell you, me and my grandson hate this thing. We hate it because these things are the worst piece of junk in the world as far as maintenance, trying to maintain it. First of all, they have huge issues. Transmission issues, electrical issues, all sorts of issues. But anyways, and they're hard to work on. So the first thing is the steering. He had issues with the steering and the brakes, and we ended up having to replace the brake lines in the car. Then the transmission went. And again, she loves this car. Otherwise, if it was up to me and him, it'd be sitting in the junkyard right now. Sorry. If it was up to me and him, it would be sitting in the junkyard right now. But the transmission went in the damn thing, and he lived downtown at the time in an apartment, and it did have a driveway to this apartment, so in a garage that actually the landlord had a bunch of stuff stored in. So we were able to move the stuff, put the get the car into the garage, and we went to a junkyard and found a Rendezvous that had been damaged. Now again, Rendezvous are noted for their transmission going. So what we looked for was a Rendezvous that had been in an accident, that was taken to the junkyard for an accident, and that way we knew that it wasn't taken there because the transmission was junk. And my light goes out. Let me bring you back. Let me readjust that. Okay, I'm back. So anyways, we go to a junkyard now to find this transmission, and our thinking was that finding a Rendezvous that was wrecked, that way we knew that it was taken to the junkyard because of the wreck, not because it had a bad transmission in it. Well, the Buick Rendezvous is like this small, it's one of those SUV crossover type things. It's small, and let's not call it a minivan, let's call it a kind of an SUV crossover. Their attempt at an SUV crossover, calling it an SUV crossover is being absolutely giving it way too much credit. So I don't know whether you guys have ever done anything in the junkyard, but the Buick Rendezvous's got a transverse engine in it, so the engine sits sideways in the damn thing, and it's got front wheel drive, so the engine sits really forward in it and has a corresponding gear reduction coming out of the back end of the engine, and the transmission actually sits behind the engine and kind of running parallel with it, and drives the two front wheels. Um, so we're in a junkyard. Um, it's really hard to do stuff in a junkyard. You know, the car's on uneven ground to begin with. We got the car, we drag a jack in, we've got wheelbarrows full of tools and stuff. Now you can't use cutting torches or anything like that in a junkyard. So we jack the car up, we've got it setting up on rims, and we're trying to pull the transmission out of this car in the junkyard, which was kind of like a comedy act. But anyways, we got it out, got it back in, and that car has been a major pain in the ass. Really has. I mean, everything goes wrong with it. So the door goes bad. You know, I took her downtown the other day she had to go someplace, and she doesn't like to drive downtown, and she doesn't like, because of driving but mainly parking, trying to find a parking place to get. And, you know, we've got a 4-year-old great granddaughter that is very intelligent, and very well mannered, but, you know, trying to find a parking spot and then walking maybe 5 or 6 or 7 blocks to get to your appointment with a 4-year-old that wants to look at everything and know about everything. But anyways, I took her down, so she was kind of complaining about not fixing the door. You know, my grandson, he didn't want to fix the door. You know, it's been bad for a long time, and I got to tell you, you know, no matter how much we love her, just doing anything to fix this car is like having to go to prison. You know, you're just dreading every second. Every second becomes a year in it. But anyways, we got the car in, and we tore the door off, and what it was is behind the door hinge where it attaches to the body frame. Yeah, because it's got like one of them unibody type thing situations going on. So let's call it the body frame. It's sheet metal framework, tube sheet metal framework where the door attaches to it. They had attached that hinge, which is like 1/4-inch thick metal, to the sheet metal, and then just stuck another piece of sheet metal behind it to kind of stiffen it in that spot, and it started rusting out. So he came up with all these ideas. We were going to cut the rust spot out and patch in a piece, and finally I talked him into just taking the hinge, lining it up the way it had come off, try to line it up the way it had come off, and I just welded it right onto I welded that hinge part right onto the unibody framework of the car. But it was just another deal where, man, that car is such a pain in the ass. It really is. I mean, that car is just, it's like a bad woman. You know what I mean? It's just, I don't know whether you guys ever been through that, but man, it's like, holy shit, you don't want to go home. You don't want to just, it's like you don't want to see that car. But it's fixed. Okay, what I'm going to do now is torque these bolts. Now, I could not find a torque value for them, so I'm just setting them to 35 pounds, and then they get peened over so they can't come loose. So again, I couldn't find a torque value in the book for them, but that's what I'll do. Now the one down below is behind a gear, so I'll have to judge the tightness with an open end wrench on the other ones, or a box end wrench, and just set that one for the same value. And what I'll do is, again, just do that. Kind of get a judgment for how tight it is. Yep. And then I'll paint these things over, but I'll bring you back for that. When I told you I'd bring you back for it, I wasn't going to show you painting it over, but the one thing that happened is when I painted this one over, it kind of tore that end a little bit. So what I want to do is get that out of there so that it doesn't come off, and so it wouldn't have come off and gotten into the transmission. But I'll bring you back and show it to you. Okay, there it is done. Now this one is a real kind of a bear to get to. You can't, what I did is got a little stubby screwdriver in there and hammered it up from the bottom and kind of painted it over. But it should hold, it should be good. I'll bring you back. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. I have put this gear in here. It just kind of rides on the back side of the TA, and then what I've got to do is slide the shaft in there. Yeah, great. Here's where you need 3 hands. Let me go to the manual, make sure that that's right, and I'll bring you back. What I'm doing here is trying to line these holes up. This plate rotates on the back side of the housing, and there's holes in the housing. Plus there's these two shim plates. And then I think the whole thing goes on one particular way too. So if I do that, that doesn't line up. Okay. Up. Does that line up? I'm gonna have to go look at the book and see if I can find a torque value for these, because they do not have retaining straps on them or retaining prongs on them. I'll bring you back. I gotta tell you, I couldn't find a torque value in the book for it, so I'm just gonna do it to 50 foot-pounds. And I'll bring you back.